that you all decided to join us this evening for a brief peek into some really incredible, thoughtful work that Betsy Miller has conceived and shared with a really special group of people. You all are likely familiar with Betsy as the leader of our front of house crew, but above and beyond, and more importantly, she has an incredible gift as a teacher and a maker that she is very generous in sharing with our community, and as a teacher at Salem State, and as an incredible choreographer in this new project, American Woman. So I'm going to let her talk about it. I am just going to say thank you out loud for having been also the beneficiary of this project, although not doing anything here tonight, despite all the peer pressure. I'm going to sit back and just be an audience member and let Betsy talk more about it, but thank you all for being here.
Whoa, there's a lot of you here. Thanks so much for showing up tonight. Allie, thank you for holding space for this, this project. And it's a real honor to be in this space and to share a little bit of what this project is. So again, I'm Betsy Miller, and a couple of years ago I came up with a project called the American Woman Project, American/Woman Project. I was trying to figure out a lot of things about how to navigate living in a country that day in and day out was on every level, I felt, really disrespecting women, and bringing that to my art, and maybe just out of like the Facebook activism realm and into what I actually do professionally. And I think it's so interesting that people say that the dance field is dominated by women, because it isn't. It's populated by women, but positions of power, opportunities are often finding their way more towards men. And I got a little tired. A lot tired of what happens when men and power intersect in really toxic ways. And I just thought it might be an opportunity to platform some women artists who are exceptional people in this field, who you might not even get to see all the time on a stage. And I wanted to understand this country a little bit better, so I created this crazy idea that I would collaborate with a woman, self-identified woman dance artists in every state over the course of several years, because there's a lot of states, right? Yeah, and I came up with the idea, and I thought it was actually really stupid, and I emailed a few friends, and I said, would you humor me and be a part of this? And they were actually really receptive to it. Shocking. And now you're all here, so I don't really know what's going on. It's like a weird joke. So last year I had a kind of a New England iteration of the project. I was so honored to work with Rachel Boja, who many of you know, and Kelly Lynch in Connecticut, Allie James, where did you, oh, there you are, in Maine, Lida Winfield in Vermont, Jessie Stinnett, who's from New Hampshire originally, Allie Kenner-Brodsky, who many of you know, who's been to Bates as the Massachusetts artist, and a good friend of mine, Shira Baryshnikov, who's worked with me in other projects for Rhode Island. I think I got all the New England states. Yeah, and then took it out of New England this year and went out west, worked with Meredith Lyons, who you'll see dancing tonight, and Natalie Desch in Utah. Sorry, Meredith was in Colorado, Natalie in Utah, a friend of mine, Jamie Arnold in Montana, and most recently, Laquimah, who spends her time in a lot of places, but we're calling her the Georgia person. Artists move around a lot. I'm sure you all know that, but it's really become apparent to me this year because like already 2 people who I've collaborated with have left the states they were supposedly representing. And I'm really excited because I'm also going to be working with 2 other members of the Bass Dance Festival community this fall, Paula MacArthur, where are you, Paula, in Iowa, and Rebecca Steinberg in Tennessee. I just have to say, it's an amazing opportunity for me because these women are super, super awesome and unique. And I start every process with an interview, sometimes in person, sometimes over Skype. I ask usually about 10 or 12 of the same-ish questions that have to do with learning a little bit about the woman's identity, her perspectives, and what she wants to make. So another really important aspect of this project is that I want to make it as little about me as possible. And this is really an opportunity to facilitate an opportunity for a woman dance artist to do something that she would find exciting, challenging, fun. And my job as a choreographer to facilitate that. So to flip the hierarchy of, kind of choreographer-dancer relationship that we often kind of fall into. And that has been keeping me on my toes in really satisfying and really scary ways. And typically we have about like 3 days to make a solo. In Lida's case, which you'll see tonight, it was a duet because Lida said that I had to be in it. And if you know Lida, she's like super persuasive, so you just do what she says. And it works out better that way. And I'm really happy that it worked out that way. So you'll see me with Lida in a little bit. I have blattered on long enough for sure. So what you're going to see now is a solo that Laquimah and I have been working on during our time here. And we'll go right into a solo that Meredith and I worked on in Grand Junction, Colorado in March for 3 days. And then a duet with Lida that we made here at the festival last year and that premiered in Gloucester, Massachusetts in December. Okay, so here we go, and thanks for being here.
Carl's, by the way. And next up, you're going to hear Carl Landa, who has actually composed music for 2 of the pieces created so far. So enjoy. You ready, Mayor? Yeah. All right.
we danced together was for a piece that Kristen O'Neill made. And then the second time we danced together was for a piece that Kathleen Hermsdorf made. So this family is really something special. How do you think it's going so far? Wait, let me rephrase that. If you were gonna die in 1 hour, what would you do?
You know, I guess my first instinct is that I'm gonna call my dad. He's my favorite person. You know, but this year I actually had just in May, my dad got really sick, and like real sick. And we were driving to the ER, and we were really stuck in traffic. And I was pretty sure that he wasn't gonna make it, and that we weren't gonna make it to the ER, and that he was gonna die. And I sort of, again, like in this question, I imagine, right, I have all these things that I should say, all the things that you imagine that you're gonna say, and I did not say a single thing in the car. I didn't say a single thing in the car. So, I don't know.
Well, when you're gone, what do you hope people will say about you?
What do I hope they'll say about me?
Yeah.
You know, I know that Betsy's gonna ask me questions, right? Like that's, maybe you can tell, maybe you know this, like I know she's gonna ask me questions. Okay, what do I hope that they're gonna say about me?
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
What do you hope they're gonna say about you? Okay, what do you hope they're gonna forget about you?
Okay. I hope they're gonna forget, well, I have terrible gas. I ditched Rebecca Stone in the 7th grade for Jenny Rooney because Jenny was so much cooler. I'm incredibly anxious despite my demeanor. Maybe they'll never know.
you get anxious?
Like, what is there not to be anxious about? I don't know, I think this like epidemic of like imposter syndrome, like self-loathing thing is just rampant. Like, I feel like, I don't know why we're all spending so much time hating ourselves, but we are doing it. Yeah. So I feel anxious about that. I feel anxious about this. Just feels like you're just not going to be good enough. It's just going to be endless shame.
Well, what's good enough? What would good enough look like? What would good enough
Oh my God, Miller, did you hear this
be
question?
like? What's good enough?
I don't know. The trees?
I think now is a really good time to change the subject. So I'm going to ask you a question that I'm a little nervous to ask you in front of all these people. And I've actually asked you a lot of questions that I'm nervous to ask you in front of a lot of people. So I'm sure everyone will forgive me for taking my time here to awkwardly pause. Okay, so why do you think, like on average, if we looked at everybody statistically here tonight, why do you think they're here?
Because of you. Why are you here?
Well, because of you, but that sounds like a cop-out. I mean, literally because of you. How many, like statistically speaking, how many people in here do you think felt anxious coming into the space? I appreciate that I probably asked you to answer this question in movement, but could you just answer it in words? Just this time. Percentage, ballpark.
I think, I don't know if it's about like the anxiety of this moment, of this room, but just in our lives. I would give it a good 90%.
That low, huh? What do you think would happen if we could just, like, let's just say that anxiety was an outfit we were wearing, that sense of not being good enough, not being enough, that imposter syndrome. What if it was an outfit we were wearing and we could just take it off? I'm not going to take off my clothes to demonstrate that because I really want to. Okay, sorry. So what if we let go of the feeling that we weren't good enough? And we put on the feeling that we were enough. I guess my question is, what would happen then? Deeply lucky I am to be doing this. And I will also say that for some of you who've seen my duet with Lida, it's very different every time. And thank you for bringing whatever feelings you brought into this room, whether it was anxiety or like total lack of anxiety. I would project it. I'll say that. So the purpose of this showing is for you to see these women, for an opportunity for you to see them and to get a little taste of what this project is. I hope that you've enjoyed yourselves. I hope that it made you think about something that interests you in relation to the way that we might take for granted certain structures and certain power dynamics in this field, and how maybe we can stop taking things for granted and do things differently, and structure things in the way that fits our lives and the way that we see the world. And I do want you to hear a little bit from each of these artists if they want to talk, and what I'm hoping that they'll share from you. Talk about whatever you want, but I would love for you to share a little bit about how this process, because it is very much a process, has intersected in your life, in your professional and your personal life, and say anything that has been meaningful to you and where you are with it. How's that?
I will talk first. Everybody just looked down.
Can you all hear us up there? A little louder.
Let's get a little closer. Like modern dance slide.
Yes. What I've been really just happy and just thrilled about being in the process with Betsy are the questions that she's asked, especially during the interview. And they were really hard questions that I have never actually been asked before, that I hadn't realized. And that was like, what does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be a woman? That was like the hardest question for me to answer. And we talked a lot about, like, maybe you asked me why I like to dance or why I dance or something
why
like
dance?
that. And my response was, I just want to be a badass. And,
Well, you've done.
but what was really great about being in a process with Betsy is the accountability of, okay, I have this goal of being a badass. How am I going to get to that goal? And I feel like you really did a great job cultivating the rehearsal process and the creation process of also pulling out the things that I have a hard time with. I really like to dance fast. Mm-hmm. And we talked about why I like to dance fast, which is all entwined in this, what I feel like being a badass. And so I feel like she really helped me start to explore the other side of, I can feel like a badass and be in a slower moment and breathing. I don't always like breathe and let things go and drop into it. So that was a great challenge for me. And I don't know that this is necessarily tying into the question that you're asking us, Betsy, but it was making me think of we were talking about like me being from the South, growing up in the South, and the expectations of what a woman is supposed to be. And I think that's why it was really hard for me to answer that question, because for so long I have gone against those expectations. And sometimes when I do dip back into those expectations, like I've been married for 12 years, or we were talking about nail polish, like I like to get my nails done. And so I still dip back into these things that are stereotypically associated with being feminine. And sometimes I've, in the past, felt certain ways about that, like I don't want to do what's expected of me. And she just really, in her questions, made me reflect about just why I am that way. And I'm still trying to answer like what it means to be a woman for me. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but this is what I've gotten out of the process so far. What else did we talk about? There were some really hard questions. I think I also kept associating women and like body, like the outer like look of a woman. And so anyway, within the process, we pulled certain things like that in, these different images of like what I think it means to be a woman, and just like bubbly, because I was also I had to describe myself. And just my moods that I was in those days. So like, what is my today phrase? What is my tomorrow phrase? You know, what was my yesterday phrase? Yeah, so I will just end with, I'm really excited about the process. It was really challenging. I feel like I got to meet my goal, but in a way that I wouldn't have typically gotten there, because Betsy was in the room and because she facilitated a process that allowed that space. Yes.
This made me realize that something I should probably share is, so this is really a process-oriented project, and the reason I'm in it is to have these conversations and have this time in the studio. And then once we make a thing, if we indeed make a thing, which the possibility is we like spend time and like nothing will happen. And that's my constant fear and anxiety is like, we'll like just waste our time and we won't have a product that can be like appreciated in a capitalistic society. But it hasn't happened yet. So anyway, once we make a thing, it really belongs to the artist. And these are in various states of process, but it's really up to Laquimah and Meredith and Lida what we do with it. And I'm really grateful that they agreed that this would be part of it. But I also should say that because I know the question comes up a lot about like, is there going to be a big show? And if you know anybody who wants to like give us like $500,000, there will be a really big show. But it's actually not that important to me.
So I left, so Betsy and I have had this conversation before this process. It's actually, so if you don't know, Betsy and I are, I feel like, very close. So like when I have like a life crisis, the person I call is Betsy. So, and she just kind of puts me in my place.
And you guys speak up.
And then she also was like, no, you're okay, or like, no, like what you're saying is correct. So I left Maine 3 years ago, and when I moved to Colorado for a teaching appointment, it was right before the election. And I'm from the Northeast. I've lived a lot of places and travel a lot, but I'm from the Northeast. I identify as a person from the Northeast. And I moved to a beautiful state on the Colorado-Utah border. So I'm not in Boulder, just to want to put that out there, to be really clear about that. And because Boulder is what makes Colorado a blue state. And Colorado is a red state, very much a red state. And so I moved to this place. It was so beautiful. It was sunny all the time, and it wasn't gray that it can sometimes get here in Maine in the winter. And I moved right for the election, and I didn't know what I was walking into. And so I think a lot of people, depending on how you feel, felt a certain way at a certain point in time. I felt a certain way, and I couldn't really I couldn't go to my new job and be like, hooray, at my new job. And I remember calling Betsy and needing a plug-in, a check-in. Fast forward, we've had these conversations a lot of the conversations that she posed into this work several times and helped me navigate how to be in a state that I don't know. When I say state, a physical state, a state, and a landscape, and how to navigate the two feelings of feeling lonely and loneliness, and can you feel both at the same time or not? And how do you navigate that? And how do you navigate being a woman? And if you don't already know me, I already know this about myself, is that I'm a pretty independent, sometimes can be strong, and sort of like tell it how it is. And that is hard for people to hear sometimes. So that doesn't sit very well in that particular part of the country. And an educated woman, to some degree. And so Betsy knew this, and so when we started this process, I was in a desperate desire to get out of the state in which I was at. And so she provided so much light. Yeah. With that being said, when she came into Colorado in March, she was only there for like 3 days, and we had to go to ACDA, if you guys know what that is, or whoever. And so we had to go
in Utah.
In Utah. Right, at the University of Utah. Yeah, so Betsy was with me for like 3 days, and then we left and we drove to Utah, and I got to show her this amazing, beautiful landscape of the West. And it is really, really beautiful, and it's so stunning, and it's really great if you're looking to like look at the stars and be in the desert by yourself. But I was done with that. So with that, I then was trying to figure out my own identity, which Betsy helped me find within this work. And then now my life has completely changed. And a lot of it is the impetus of this work because she helped me navigate where I was going within the states that I was in. So for this work, the way in which she set a structure was all these states that I have lived in and out of, and I travel through them, and I have different emotional reactions to those spots of how I felt and what feels like home and doesn't feel like home, and how do I identify within that. So much so that I have now, because of this work, it's one of the reasons, it's not the only reason, but I'm actually going to leave the country for the next year. And I think a lot about what it means to be, as Kima was saying, the questions of what is it to be American, and what is it to be an American woman. And so with that, I've been thinking about that for a while, so much so that I decided that I was going to leave and join the Peace Corps. Because I really think a lot about, like, what do I have of service, and as an American, and what can I provide within the states that I'm in, and the places that I'm at, but then other places. And so with this work, who knew this like 4-minute, 3-day thing could really shift your perspective of like how you identify, and do we ever really stick with who we, like that one moment of identity, and how can that continue to grow? And so all of what Kima said with those posing questions of like nail polish, right? That I have on, like how do I, what's the sense of beauty, which is why I had my hair down. Finding the beauty within, but then like how do you find beauty inside of yourself? And I think a lot about that she helped pose the questions within the works in which we made in a very short time is how to feel comfortable within oneself. And for me, that's really hard to do. Also, I wasn't planning on coming up to Bates to dance like this way. I was just coming up to take dance classes and say hi. I was like,
He's like, I'm coming to take a class. I got other plans for you.
I guess what has felt interesting to me is, so basically Betsy and I have this improvised score where she's going to ask me these hard questions and I have to answer in certain spaces in the room. And sometimes I'm supposed to answer short and sometimes I'm supposed to answer long. And what feels sort of like a little bit of a mirror, right, is that's like she's asked all of us really hard questions. They're different questions than the ones that she asks me here, but still difficult questions in sort of how are you going to answer and how do you answer in the moment. How do you answer with your body and how do you answer with your voice, and are those actually the same thing or are those different things? When do they line up? So it's felt nice to me to think that actually our duet is a little bit of a mirror of kind of this thing that's happening amongst all these other solos. And I also really like the idea that, like, in that each of our answers, if you will, are really different from each other. And like the opportunity to have like, oh, that this is a little show, and then we'll have another little show, and this gathering of these few states, and these gathering of these 2 states. There's something that feels sort of magical about a continuation, that you're seeing 3 of what will be 50 that will happen many places. That feels nice, that it's a bigger continuum than this moment. And also that like what I answer today is not what I would answer tomorrow, and not the same question. And that's nice.
I also really fucked up tonight.
No, it's not true.
Yeah. Some of you saw this a year ago. Who was here? Who was in Skelton with us a year ago? Yeah. Who was in Gloucester? Nancy has seen every version of this duet.
But I think that's part of it, right? Is that it's unpredictable,
It's
and so there's actually not a fuck up, right? It's like it's an alive thing, like our lives. And sometimes, that isn't what you think it's going to be.
Okay. Yeah. And something that helped me so much that Lida shared with me or a perspective that Lida shared with me when we were in rehearsal in Skelton one like rainy morning during Young Dancers last year when we were just chatting.
You can imagine that a lot of rehearsing looked like lying on the floor talking about our lives.
Yeah.
Which I think, like, counts, you know?
And that's what she said.
Oh. See, I still
It all counts. And so what I want to say is thank you for being a part of this, because this also counts. And all of you coming into this room and bringing your energy and your time, which is so precious at this festival, is a huge gift to this process. And I want to thank you, but also thank you so much for coming